All right. Our next installment in the story of the Gospel of Matthew comes in chapter 17, the last section in the story of the mission of Jesus, the central part where Jesus is out on mission with his disciples, training them alongside of himself while he heals, confronts the Pharisees, performs miracles, and here today we're going to wrap up this section with a story about, of all things, paying your taxes. It's for Jim Howard. That's right. That's right. And we'll get there. Matthew chapter 17, verses 22 through 27. And while they were gathering together in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and he will be raised on the third day." And they were deeply grieved. When they came to Capernaum, those who were collecting the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the 2 drachma tax?" And he said, "Yes." And when he came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first, saying, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth collect customs or poll tax? From their sons or from strangers?" When Peter said, "From strangers," Jesus said to him, "Then the sons are exempt. However, so that we do not offend them, go to the sea and throw in a hook and take the first fish that comes up. And when you open its mouth, you will find a shekel. Take that and give it to them for you and for me." This is the word of the Lord. I used to have a friend, well, I still have this friend, but I don't live in Detroit anymore, but I have a friend who lives in Detroit that decided that he wasn't going to pay taxes anymore. He had a logical reason for doing it. He's like, "I don't like the way they spend my money. They spend money on things that I don't support, and so I'm not going to pay the IRS any money at the end of the year." You can imagine how it's gone for him. Didn't go very well, and he spent years actually fighting the IRS over and over again, legal battle after legal battle, and I actually don't know where it stands today, but it was not a good idea. He was trying to work out for himself what it's his Christian responsibility in relationship to the government. And he said, well, as a Christian, I'm not going to pay these people money. That was his decision. But I have been in situations, too, where I found myself, I worked for a federally funded health center for years and years. And I oftentimes had moral struggle being involved there and the things that they supported. And it actually got to the point for me that I felt like I couldn't work there anymore and keep my moral conscience clear. It started when I was running an HIV testing program, and some of the stuff that they were asking me to educate people on came down the pipe, and I was like, well, I can't do this. And I had to make a decision about what my job was going to look like in relationship to the government that was teaching things that I didn't align with. And then for us Christians, working alongside secular authorities, working in an environment that sometimes doesn't align with our personal values can carry significant moral cost. It can carry weight to it. Internal conflict, diminished integrity, and a sense of complicity in actions that you find ethically troubling. And we're all making decisions every day about what we will support and allow into our lives, the kind of things that we want to be known for as Christians. And in today's passage, a question Peter faces regarding taxes becomes a teaching moment for Jesus. Provides some insight about what our relationship is with the secular authorities, the governing authorities in our lives. This is not the whole story, of course. There's lots of passages about what it means to relate to government, but there is a spoiler here. You do have to pay your taxes. In today's story, we'll see Jesus delivered into the hands of men, his words. We'll see him asked if he pays his taxes. He'll lean into Peter and say, what do you think, Peter? What do you think about these guys asking us to give them money? We'll see that the sons are not exempt. But let us comply with their desires in order to not offend. There's a constant tension, actually, in Jesus' ministry. He taught in the synagogues, yet he called their leaders synagogue of Satan. He follows Jewish religious rules, but at sometimes seemed blasphemous in his rejection of those same rules. Jesus wasn't following what people expected from the Messiah, even what they wanted from the Messiah. And his presence disrupted people's understanding about power and authority. Here was a guy from nowhere doing healing miracles. He spoke with authority few had experienced before. He was a carpenter's son, never studied among the Pharisees, yet he had more authority in his teaching than they did. And the people responded wildly to him. The authorities, on the other hand, wanted to kill him, but had to tolerate him because the people loved him and he loved the people. So the question here either comes in two forms. It's either these folks are testing Jesus about whether or not he's going to fully challenge the authorities that be, or it may just be a legitimate question from this guy asking him, hey, this new kingdom's coming, so how do we relate to the government around us? In essence, if you're from heaven, Jesus, how does heaven relate to earth? Will God submit and pay his taxes? And how will God relate his people in relationship to worldly authority? And in pressing into today's passage, we probably won't get a full picture of what God's perspective on it, but it definitely does offer us some insight. What we can see clearly today is the call to align ourselves closely with God's guidance and priorities. In doing so, we find the kind of peace and reassurance we can only find in knowing that we are doing things his way. It's a challenging but joyful life, knowing that we are pleasing our Father in heaven. This lesson about our relationship to governing authorities is closely related to Jesus' passion. It's not a mistake that Matthew juxtaposes the two stories together, that he talks about Jesus' passion, and then he leads into this story about his relationship with the kings of the earth. It's the second of 4 passion predictions. And if anyone ever had a right to come to earth and establish a new government, it would have been him. But the fact that his passion is so closely connected to this teaching about our relationship to governing authorities should be educational in and of itself. Jesus largely veiled his power and glory on earth, choosing rather to come in humility and service rather than establishing his own kingdom. And this is hugely important. If Jesus isn't establishing a kingdom here in this age, in this time, until his second coming, we ought to be careful of establishing one for ourselves. Jesus comes to show us a better way. His way of relating to the powers that be in this age of grace, where the church's job is primarily to win the lost, to bring as many as can be into the fold, fulfilling the mission of Jesus in Matthew 28:18-20. And in the meantime, learning, changing our minds, metanoia, repenting of our unaligned ways, and align ourselves with this true and coming King that will return. That's our job. We're exiles here. Our King was killed by the powers that be, and there's currently an uncomfortable truce between us and them. Or, as we'll see in a minute, an accepted relationship of authority. The words used to describe Jesus' passion here say that he was delivered into human hands. It's an interesting addition to the passion prediction. Who will kill the Messiah? Well, we will. Humans in authority will kill the Messiah. It's a combination of religious and civil authority that work in cahoots with each other to bring about the death of Christ the King. That the ruling powers, at least in this place, in this time, kill their true authority. What we're experiencing now as a church is the in-between state. This is not the end game of God, or even the hope that he had for how things should be. The powers that be right now are not the king. They are allowed to reign, and their reign is only valid to the extent they align with the will of God. We find this in Romans chapter 13. The scripture is very clear here that governing authorities are established by God. Verse 1, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which is from God. The authorities that exist have been appointed by God. Consequently, whoever resists authority is what? Opposing what God has set in place. And those who do so will bring judgment upon themselves. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Well, hopefully. Do you want to be unafraid of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will have his approval. For he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for he does not carry the sword in vain. He is God's servant, an agent of retribution for the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to authority, not only to avoid punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. Practical application. This is also why you pay your taxes. For the authorities are God's servants who devote themselves to their work, hopefully. Pay everyone what you owe them. Taxes to whom taxes are due, revenue to whom revenue is due, respect to whom respect is due, and honor to whom honor is due. It's a Christian ethic coming out of Paul's 12-chapter explanation of the gospel. This is how we are supposed to live in the world. A very clear explanation. We are to submit to the governing authorities. It comes from God to do good. The wrongdoer should fear. We should owe the government what it's due. That is the taxes that they use to supply us with the services that we need to live in an orderly world. If this is true, then this brings up a question for me as I'm studying. Well, why is this question necessary to Peter? Are you paying your taxes, Jesus? Well, it's clear that we should submit to the governing authorities, so why are they asking it? The question comes in verses 24 and 25. It's those who are collecting what's called the 2 drachma tax. The 2 drachma tax was a Jewish tax levied on every male Jew between the age of 20 and 50 in order to support the temple and the services it provided to the people. So every year you pay the 2 drachma tax so that the temple can keep doing what it's doing. The candles stay lit. The chairs are clean. This is the kind of thing that they're collecting right now. And so they show up. And some people think that this is Jesus' reaction to religious authority because it is the 2 drachma temple tax. But the thing is that in Rome at the time, no other temple was allowed to collect taxes. And so Rome has to allow the Jews to do this. So this is a combination of both religious and civil authority that Jesus is up against, that Peter actually is up against. It's more of a both than an either or. Rome didn't allow these people to collect taxes, and so they had to give the Jews permission. The question really raises the question about Jesus' followers' relationship to the human authorities here on earth, both religious and civic, because both are present in the question. It's interesting, too, that they don't ask Messiah, they ask Peter. He wasn't the leader of the group yet, but he's gaining authority, and this looks like they're addressing him because of his emerging leadership among the disciples. Keep in mind, too, that Matthew is a tax collector. This story doesn't show up in any other of the Gospels, and probably for good reason, because Matthew was interested about taxes and Jesus' thoughts about them. It was a particular interest to him. As a matter of fact, he brings up another story in Matthew 22, which we'll look at in a bit, again, about taxes. Well, Peter's reply to the question about Jesus paying taxes is yes, he does. This may be a sign of Jesus' compliance with the authorities around him. But when he gets inside, he asks Peter a provocative but simple question. Hey, Peter. Peter must be like, whew. Gets inside, and then Jesus asks him this question. Tell me, Peter, from whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their sons or from other people's sons, basically, others? Do they collect it from their sons? I think this means 2 things. It shows the corruption of the kings of the earth, the authorities of the earth. The kings of the earth unjustly collect from others more than they collect from their own children, a sort of unjust bias inherent in the kings of the earth. It's going to sound a little bit more political than it should, but it reminds me of how Congress doesn't have the same health care that we do. I mean, we're paying the taxes, they're getting this Sterling plan, and we're out here, wrestling to get the kind of insurance coverage that we have, which can be good. But the second thing is Jesus is saying this parabolically to show that the children of God are free from the obligation. So 1, the kings of the earth unjustly collect more than they do to care for their children, better than they care for their people. And 2, Jesus is using this parabolically to say that we're free. The children of God, the sons of God are free. In Samuel 8:10, this supports the first point. It says this. This is when the people of Israel are calling for a king. In 1 Samuel 8:10-17, it says, "These will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and to run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and make his implements of war and the equipment of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to who? His courtiers, or his court, his people." See, the kings of the earth will be unjust. God says it when the people of Israel asked for a king in 1 Samuel 8. If you know the backstory, God is offering himself as king. And the people of Israel are like, no, we don't want you as king. All these people around us have these cool kings, and we want one. And this is the warning that God gave to his people. And actually, the story of the people of Israel is riddled with unrighteous kings that would abuse and take from his people. So in Romans 13, we see that God establishes governments, that God has allowed this to happen, but it is his supreme will that he would lead the government himself. We know this because in Revelation, when things come to an end, who's sitting on the throne? Jesus. There's a human hierarchy beneath him, but God is king at the end of all things. And that God allows for human governments, I believe, much like he allows for the certificate of divorce. It's not his will that people will get divorced, but if people are going to do this, then I need to make provision for it. Human government and a human king, is a provision for human sin. So while God establishes governments and we are to submit to them, it is not his supreme will, but allowance for this time and age until he can reestablish himself as the supreme ruler of all things. The institution itself of government is good to the extent that it provides for the safety and security and the wise distribution of resources to its people. But there's another very important part to the story. We've been studying through Revelation. Man, Revelation is you want to have your mind blown. It's very clear from Revelation that Satan can corrupt governments. As a matter of fact, when the beast arises at the end of all time, he will use human government to do so. The authorities that be will ask every person in all of creation to take a mark. It's called the mark of the beast. Those who do not take the mark won't be able to buy, sell, or trade. We don't know exactly what that means, but it's not good. He's called the great deceiver. And he will gather the kings of the earth at the end of the age, those that align with the principalities and powers of this world, and they will make themselves enemies of God. In Revelation 19 it says, Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried out with a loud voice, saying to all the birds which fly in mid-heaven, Come, assemble for the great supper of God, so that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of those who sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and slave, and small and great. And I saw, this is the part, I saw the beast and the kings of the earth, the exact language that Jesus uses in this passage, and their armies assembled to make war against who? Jesus, him who sat on the throne, and his great army. The language that Jesus uses here, the kings of the earth, is often used for authority that stands in opposition to God. So, they won, these folks, these kings of the earth, have no authority over Jesus. He is actually the king. My friend, improperly applying the scripture, thinks that he's aligning himself with Jesus' teaching. He's saying, well, I'm not paying those people nothing. Well, right. Many of them are the enemies of God. But God tells us, so as not to offend them, let us give them what they're due. But only what they're due. The sons of God are truly free from all the authority of the kings of this earth. So when Jesus provides rationale for paying the tax, it's not because the Son of Man and his followers have any obligation to this system. But they want to make no obstruction to the kingdom of God's coming or the expansion of the gospel in this time and place. Don't offend them unnecessarily. We've got work to do. Then in Matthew 22, this is the second story where Jesus talks about our relationship to the government with relationship to taxes. It gets a hair edgier. Then the Pharisees went and plotted together how they might trap him in what he said, and they sent their disciples to him. along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are truthful and teach the way of God in truth and defer to no one." And they rub the brown up their nose. "For you are not partial to anyone. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to give a poll tax to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, perceiving their malice, and said, "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used for the poll tax." And they brought him a denarius. This comes out slightly more clearly in this passage in verse 20 through 22, when Jesus says, they said to him, and he said to them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" And they said to him, "Caesar's." Well, then he said, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God." And hearing this, they were amazed, and leaving him, they went away. Jesus is a genius. I mean, of course he is. What God is really asking here is what truly belongs to Caesar. What truly belongs to him? He hands this coin to the crowd. "Render this unto him. Give to him what is his." But, as we'll see and know, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Caesar has no idea who he's demanding taxes from. What truly belongs to Caesar is nothing. Everything belongs to the Lord. The rulers themselves, those who disobey, will find out soon enough. They decide to align themselves against the Lord. They will find out that their authority is nothing. But Jesus asked for us compliance. In areas that do not oppose kingdom priorities, we are to comply. Here, the Jewish temple, it's deeply corrupt and in opposition to Jesus' movement and teaching, asks for the temple tax, and Jesus says, "Go ahead and pay them the tax." The Romans are asking for a tax, the same government that will crucify Jesus in a matter of months, and he says to them, "Give them what they have created," in an attempt to show them respect in spite of their corruption. This last act of Jesus I find to be, I just find it wonderful. An absolute act of paradoxical rebellion to these folks. They say they can have authority of me, that's fine. They can ask that I even pay the temple tax, that's great, I will do that. They can even crucify the Son of Man, but let me show them who I am. Hey, let's go pay our taxes, Simon. Run down to the lake and put a hook in the water and see what comes out. Tosses that hook in there. Sure enough, the first fish he catches has a 4 drachma coin in it. Who is the Lord of heaven and earth but me, Messiah? Go and pay both our taxes. Show them who the Lord is, Simon. It's not a self-serving act. God isn't pulling the fish slot machine to get the money out. It's not a frivolous use of power. He's showing Peter primarily that he will submit, but in a way that shows that he is still Lord. I can draw this coin up miraculously because I am the Lord of all creation, Peter. They think that they are lords, but I am the King of kings and Lord of lords. Jesus this morning teaches that we are exempt because we are children of the King. He also teaches us to comply, even to corrupt governments, so as not to offend them. But one thing that he doesn't say directly, but I think the overall life and teaching of Jesus teaches us clearly, is that God's kingdom and Caesar's kingdom are not the same. That his paying his taxes is not affirmation of Caesar's authority, but merely to avoid offense. That the overall testimony of the Scripture is that worldly powers and authorities are easily corrupted and will likely face judgment. And that first and foremost, followers of Jesus should take account of how strong our alliances are to Caesar, to the king. And make no mistake, America is Caesar. It's the strongest empire in the world today. We can comply, but our hearts belong to the Lamb. So pay your taxes, but don't give your heart to Caesar. We're to honor the institution that Jesus puts in place, but we ought to be very careful of turning up the heat too hot of our patriotic fervor. We can respect, yes, and we should. Love, that belongs to God alone. Jesus could have said a lot of things in this moment about Rome. Man, those guys are great. God bless Rome. He's strangely silent. Perhaps he knows how easily wooed and misguided we become when we get close to worldly power. In the chapter to come, in chapter 18, Jesus will teach us what it's like to live under kingdom authority. We do well to listen closely to his voice and teaching in this chapter. He says things like coming to him as a child. God alone is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. In Daniel chapter 2, the strongest king on the earth at the time, King Nebuchadnezzar, said to Daniel, "Truly, your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery to me." Jesus' silence teaches us that his silence about Rome ought to be instructed to us. We need to be very, very careful in who we draw our allegiances to. He alone is worthy of the devotion that we often show our country. Close this morning by singing hymn number 272, Crown Him with Many Crowns.